Hello, and welcome back to Case Cleanup, the immature problem child of Hot Mess Murder Club. And this one here is going to be a quick case about an outlaw who couldn't rob a train correctly, got himself killed in 1911, and somehow stayed employed for the next 65 years. And this is Elmer McCurdy. And apparently he's America's original next top model. Hot Mess Murder Club! Let's get into it. Elmer was born in 1880 and was a failed outlaw until he was killed in a shootout in 1911. Let's go through the timeline. January 1911. Before he even managed to pull off a headline-worthy failure, McCurdy was arrested in St. Joseph, Kansas, alongside another would-be robber for carrying burglary tools, which is wild considering this was the one time he hadn't actually blown something up yet. And moving along to March 1911, this is where Elmer really committed to his brand. McCurdy used way too much nitroglycerin to open a train safe, and instead of cleanly accessing the money, the explosion destroyed most of the loot, fusing silver coins into the walls of the safe like some kind of weird metal art installation. And his cut ended up being minimal, but his reputation turned to garbage. And then, in September of 1911, McCurdy and his accomplices, they attempt to rob a Citizens Bank. And once again, nitroglycerin entered the chat, and that immediately ruined everything. They walked away with about $150 in silver coins, which back then, that was still pretty fucking humiliating for a full-scale bank robbery. And finally, pushing ahead to October 4th, 1911. This was supposed to be the big one. McCurdy believed the train was carrying a large sum of money, when in fact, it was not. Instead, he robbed a passenger train, and he managed to steal about $46, a watch, a coat, and some whiskey. Like, that's not a heist. That's pretty much a typical day in St. Louis. And after the botched robbery, him and his crew hid out in the Osage Hills, where law enforcement surrounded the barn where they were hiding. And there is where he engaged in a roughly hour-long shootout with the posse, refusing to surrender like a real boss. But inevitably, he was killed by a single shot to the chest in the hayloft. And really, that should have been the end of it. A bad criminal, a short career, a bullet-riddled finale, roll the credits, right? No, absolutely not. We're just getting started. After his death, no family came forward to claim the body, so the funeral director embalmed him using a cocktail heavy in arsenic because apparently back then, the vibes were like, yeah, let's preserve this guy indefinitely, just in case, or something. And with no burial planned, Elmer was propped up in the funeral home, rifle in hand, and labeled the bandit who wouldn't give up. They actually charged admission for this, because I guess capitalism doesn't sleep, even when the product is a fucking corpse. And that decision kicked off a post-mortem career that lasted longer than most marriages nowadays. Sorry, not sorry. From the 1920s through the 1960s, Elmer's mummified body was passed around like a cursed lawn gnome. Carnival owners, sideshow operators, wax museums, really anyone with a display case and questionable ethics. One of his stops included Louis Sonny's Museum of Crime. I mean, if you're going to exploit a dead outlaw, you might as well slap the word education on it and call it culture, right? And the weird thing is nobody asked where he came from. No one questioned why he never decomposed. Everyone just kind of agreed that this extremely stiff man with human teeth and real hair was totally normal carnival inventory. And here's where the chain of custody gets even dumber. By the late 1960s, Elmer landed in the hands of a wax museum owner named Spoony Singh. Singh took one look at the mummy and decided it didn't look realistic enough to be wax. Let that sink in. So, rather than realizing he was holding an actual dead human being, Singh sold the body off yet again. This time, Elmer was sent to the New Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach, California. Clearly, when something doesn't fit in a museum, the obvious next step would be to ship his ass off to a seaside amusement park. Okay, and here is where we reach peak absurdity. Around 1968, Elmer McCurdy was installed in the Laugh in the Dark Funhouse ride. They painted him day-glow orange, hung him from a noose, and used him as a spooky prop. And then for roughly 4 to 8 years, Elmer just dangled there, while families rode past, laughing, screaming, and assuming he was a mannequin. It's never a mannequin, by the way. Staff thought he was fake. Guests thought he was fake. Nobody questioned why he had the posture of someone who died and was angry about it. This man survived train robberies. He survived an arsenic embalming, only to spend his afterlife as background decor next to a papier-mâché fucking ghost. But then, in 1976, a film crew from the $6 Million Man showed up to shoot at the park. A crew member moved the dummy, and the arm snapped off. Inside was a real human bone. Suddenly, the haunted funhouse was less ha-ha spooky and more call the fucking authorities immediately spooky. Police came, coroners came, historians came, and even forensic experts stepped in. Eventually, they did trace the body back to Elmer, a man who's been dead for 65 years, who had somehow outlasted multiple amusement parks, museums, and probably business licenses. And finally, in 1977, Elmer McCurdy was buried in Oklahoma. They poured concrete over his grave, which feels less like respect and more like a preventative measure. There was no more carnivals, no more moving for work, and no more accidental casting calls. Just rest. At last. So, for a quick recap, Elmer McCurdy was a terrible criminal in life, but he was an extremely successful attraction in death. His story is funny because it's just so fucking absurd, and it's also so deeply American. A man failed upward so hard that dying became his best career move. And Americans have always loved the macabre, and literally nothing would be more entertaining to us than a dead guy propped up in a funeral home. I mean, come on, I would fucking pay to see that. Don't act like you wouldn't. Either way, Elmer may have robbed the wrong trains, and he may have died broke, but goddammit, his corpse toured the country for decades like he was the star of Weekend at Bernie's. And I'm just happy he finally found a resting place under a weighted blanket. So yeah, that's basically the end of it. Actually, no, that is the end of it. It's over. And don't forget to subscribe and share Hot Mess Murder Club for full-length, deep-dive case breakdowns from start to finish. New episodes drop every Monday for your listening delight anywhere you get your podcasts. And yes, even on YouTube, fucking obviously. And be sure to ring that little alert bell right here because these cute little boopers we call Case Cleanup, they live here exclusively, and we never know when the next one's going to drop. I mean, we do have lives, you know. But alright, that's it. We're done here. Get the fuck out of my house. Goodbye. Say bye, Kiki.